Are ready to start when you are ready.
So much. Can you see me? Fantastic. Good morning, everybody. I see it is already 10:05. We are about to start this webinar. So I'd like to just extend a warm welcome to everyone joining us on our Zoom platform, as well as social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. This webinar today is titled Access to Support and Industry-Focused Research within the Local Manufacturing Sector. And the webinar is brought to you very proudly by Proudly South African, as well as our partner, the Localization Support Fund. My name is Janine van Straten. I'll be the program director today. I also work at Proudly South African, and my role there is the executive responsible for strategy, so looking at localization strategies, stakeholder relations, and legal. The program might seem short, but it's going to be a very, very valuable one. And I'll shortly introduce you to our first of two speakers. It will be next on the program will be our CEO, Mr. Eustace Mashimbia from Proudly South African, and then also my dear sister Tami Muhatse from the Localization Support Fund. Tami is the CEO, and we will then, after Tami's presentation, we'll then start with the Q&A session. So I appeal to you, please don't drop your questions in the chat box, rather drop them in the Q&A box. We do not want to miss any questions that you might have, and really appeal to everybody to let them come, because this is a really valuable session. Proudly South African's role is not just to lobby for all spheres of society to buy local, but we also bring you new partners and bring together those who can assist industry as well as uplift businesses. And manufacturing is one that is close to our hearts. Our own membership base is about consists of about two-thirds manufacturers. And this is one of those sectors where we really would love to uplift. We want to see it grow, and because great employment can come from manufacturing. So it really is key that we see this industry thrive. So welcome. Please, as a reminder, drop your questions in the Q&A box, and then without any further delay, I would like to introduce you to our CEO, Mr. Eustace Mashimbia from Proudly South African. CEO, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Janine. Good morning to everyone, to my fellow panelists, Ms. Tami Muhatse, who's the CEO of SLSF, and to everyone else who's made time to join us this morning. As introduced, my name is Eustace Mashimbia. I'm going to quickly take you through a few slides that will give you a sense of what we are trying to achieve as Proudly South African, what localization is about, but most importantly, to set the tone for today's session, because in no way am I the star attraction or the main attraction for today. It's about introducing you to the Localization Support Fund and what they are about and how they are going to assist you, irrespective of whatever sector you come from. So just to give you a bit of background, Proudly South African was formed as a result of the fact that the country battles three main challenges, chief amongst them being unemployment. We all know someone who's unemployed. We know it breeds poverty, and that a lot of our people are living below the poverty line, and that the gap between those who have and those who do not have continues to grow as a result of these numbers that you see on the screen. Unemployment rate is confirmed for the end of Q2 of this year, stands at 32.6%, with 7.9 million people actively looking for jobs, and they can't find these, and 3.2 million people are discouraged and have stopped looking. So if you look at the expanded definition, you're looking at about 11.9 million people if you combine those two numbers. So our unemployment rate is actually standing at 42.1% if you look at the expanded definition of unemployment, with the most affected being the youth as well as women. And as you can see on the screen, it's a ticking time bomb in my view. One of the main causes of growing unemployment in the country continues to be the impact of imports. If you look at the furniture industry as a case study, just as a quick example of the impact of imports on an economy and on an industry, I think this is the best example. 3,500 factories or plants used to make furniture in this country back in 1999. And over a 20-year period, we lost 2,400 of those plants, and the capacity was lost. And in terms of direct jobs created, you had 50,000 people employed in this industry, reduced to about 25,000. So half of those jobs that we had in this industry have been lost. And those are just direct jobs. If you look at the indirect jobs as a result of the multiplier effect, there are many other jobs that are lost across the whole value chain. There are industries that contribute raw materials and components that are utilized by furniture manufacturers. So the 25,000 jobs that were lost are lost in furniture manufacturing businesses or entities, but across many industries like the plastics industry, which contributes synthetic fibers. Jobs are lost every time we buy imported furniture. The agricultural industry contributes natural fibers, hides and skins, which are converted into textiles and leather items. So jobs are lost in all of those industries. When you make a furniture item, you require paints and adhesives, and these come from the chemical sector. So jobs are also lost in those industries. And we require metal parts every time we make a furniture item, and this comes from the metal industry. So jobs are lost across all industries, and the impact filters also to the wholesale trade, to retailers, as well as to other industries such as logistics. And so our mandate as Policy African is to influence procurement in both the public and the private sector. So anyone who makes a purchasing decision needs to be influencers that they choose to buy locally made products, as that jobs can be created, and that as a result, those jobs that are created can be retained, and the impact we know filters down to many households, where in most instances there's only one person who earns an income, and so they're responsible for many other livelihoods. And so this concept of buying local is a global phenomenon, tried and tested all over the world, exists for regions, for countries, for towns. And if you look at countries in developed economies such as Australia, the UK, the US, they also have their own buy local campaigns. Even on the African continent, we are seeing a growth of these buy local campaigns. And the best example of an economy that believes in this and has always believed in it as part of their macroeconomic policy framework is the United States. As far back as 1933, they enacted an act, a Buy American Act, followed that up with the Buy America Act, and now they issued the Buy America Improvement Act in 2017. So about 90 years ago, they already started, practicing this philosophy of ensuring that they, whenever they make a product themselves, as best as possible, they will not necessarily allow it to come into their economy. In fact, the trade wars that exist between the US and China are mostly as a result of the fact that the Americans are of the view that if they are making a product themselves, and if they are able to meet the demand in their economy themselves without importing it, they will not allow the Chinese to bring it into their economy. And so even the current President Biden, when he came into office, within the first week of coming into office, one of the first acts that he performed as the president was to sign executive orders to strengthen the Buy American provisions into law. And so localization is very important. Some of the benefits of buying local, or of localization or local procurement includes the retention of jobs. If there's an industry, that is supported, manufacturing at large especially, and it has the ability to create as many jobs as possible. When we buy from them, we're allowing them an opportunity to create jobs, and increased buying from us means that they can retain those jobs. And as they create jobs for the most affected, the youth, the women who remain without skills, as they create the jobs and they absorb some of those people will then be in a position to acquire skills that can help them to start their own businesses, that can help them to reach and find better opportunities. And so it's important that when you buy locally, remember that the benefits do not just end at jobs, but they extend to skills development, to the development of the economy. You can drive an empowerment agenda that we have as a country and as an economy by ensuring that those who make their products locally, as a result of the localization strategies deployed in the country, they can then get an opportunity to be supported because then the benefits will not only accrue to those who have been in business for a long time, legacy suppliers that have secured all the contracts, but localization will then open up an opportunity for smaller guys who are coming in, transformed entities to also get support. Localization helps improve the living standards of both the business people who choose to invest and start businesses, as well as those who are employed in those businesses. And so it's important that we are mindful of the benefits of localization and when we make purchasing decisions. And so our focus areas as Proudly South African include focusing on buying that happens in the public sector. So all spheres of government, we have to ensure that as best as possible, we engage government as Proudly South African to get them to buy and choose locally made products, to include in their policies provisions that will enable procurement officials to choose locally made products and to issue tenders such that locally made products are given priority. The same goes for the private sector, and I'll quickly show you what we do in the private sector to get the private sector to buy local. We are meant to educate the general public on the importance of buying local. They need to understand the economic impact of their purchasing decisions. And lastly, we need to promote accessibility of locally made products and services. So whether you're a buyer in the public sector, in the private sector, or you're a member of the general public, you need to know how to access locally made products once you've made and have taken that conscious decision to choose to buy locally made products. And so that's the role of Proudly South African. Every time you come across the Proudly South African logo, you must know that it embodies these 4 key criteria. We have 4 pillars that all our members, adhere to comply with. And the first one being that the product must be made in South Africa. If you look at the Proudly South African logo, it's made up of the colors of the national flag of the Republic of South Africa. And that tells you that the product itself is made within the borders of the country, irrespective of the raw materials coming from outside of the country, because in some instances, the raw materials and components required by manufacturers or those who render services might not necessarily be available in the country. And so what we call for is the value addition or the conversion of those products or of those raw materials must happen within the borders of South Africa, so that jobs are created in the process. The products themselves must be of a high quality nature. They must comply with the standards set out in those industries from where the products come from. The companies that affiliate with us have to ensure that they help us preserve the environment by implementing, measures that will help reduce the carbon footprint, such as recycling, reusing of waste, disposing of waste responsibly. And lastly, the companies that affiliate with us have to comply with the labor legislation of the country and adhere to the prescripts of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. And so the logo itself instantly tells you that the product is made in South Africa, but the tick tells you that it's a high quality product, or that the company rendering the service to you will render a high quality service and that it complies with the standards set out in that industry. And it's very important to note that it's not only products, but it's goods and services. And so the role of Proudly South African, if you think of a SMME support ecosystem, and I think this just applies to any business support ecosystem, any business person wants access to funding, they want to access information that will help their business, they want to be assisted with compliance, including with tax or statutory obligations that they have. They look for non-financial support. They need to know how to register their trademarks, how to improve efficiencies and productivity. But all of these, as part of that ecosystem, will count for nothing if there's no one buying from them. And so Proudly South African, in line with our mandate, we've positioned ourselves as an access to market partner for new products, for new entrants, for transformed entities, basically for anything that is made in South Africa that ticks our boxes. Our role is to ensure that we help your product to reach the customer for which you intend to sell a product. So let me quickly touch on our access to market programs per sector. I'll quickly touch on what we do in the e-commerce space. We have access to market programs that are meant to assist those who have products that they ideally want to sell on online platforms. We know that the advent of shopping from the comfort of your home or your office continues to grow. And so we have formed partnerships with a lot of entities, as you see on the screen. Some are business to consumer platforms, but we've also started coming up with business-to-business opportunities. So as a member of Party South Africa, you benefit from the partnerships. You're able to list your products on there whilst we work on developing our own online shopping platform, which we hope to have ready for market sometime at the end of this year. And all our members will be able to sell on that platform. We also have programs that are targeted at the private sector. And the first one is, will you commit? And basically, we're asking the private sector to commit to job creation. And they do this by giving us commitments. A commitment basically means they are going to choose items, ring-fence those items, and buy those items locally. And so some of the examples of instances where we've had some successes is where we've gone to the banks and we've asked them to buy furniture locally, uniforms locally, promotional material and stationery for their respective banks across the country locally. And some of the banks have come on board and they've given us those commitments and they're working towards achieving those goals. Independent schools and privately owned schools have been asked to look at where the uniform comes from, to look at their desks and furniture, stationery. With the private hospitals, we've asked them to look at where their linen comes from, their bedding, the uniform for their nurses, the medical equipment, the pharmaceutical products that they offer in their hospitals. We've asked them to source those locally. When it comes to automotive manufacturers, we've asked them to look at components, their machinery, their uniform. And with retailers, the request is for them to afford higher shelf space, higher levels of shelf space and more shelf space for locally made products, to look at where their shop fitting equipment comes from, uniforms for their staff, and basically increase the ease of finding locally made products in their stores, whether be it physical stores or online stores, like I showed you earlier on, by ensuring that they stock up on more locally made products. For manufacturers broadly, we've asked them to get raw materials and packaging and to buy those locally. And these are just some examples of what we have been able to negotiate in the private sector for our members and for those who make products and services locally. We've introduced even portals, and chief amongst this is Market Access Platform. Basically, as a buyer, you are able to register yourself and then find reliable and vetted, localized and transformed suppliers that you can buy from. As a supplier, you're able to register yourself, and as a member of Party South Africa, we register you so that you can make yourself available to be found by not only your existing customers, but by other customers as well. So let me play a quick video that takes you through what the Market Access Platform is going to help us achieve, and I'll come back and wrap up my presentation.
Large companies operating in South Africa recognize the long-term strategic benefit of current legislation focusing on transformation and corporates' responsibility to localize supply chains beyond philanthropic reasons and to comply with the legislation. Corporates are increasingly investing in enterprise and supply development initiatives. However, a number of challenges remain. Finding vetted manufacturers according to local content requirements at acceptable industry standard levels of quality with the capacity to keep up with demand required from large organizations. Finding high-performing, transformed suppliers across all categories, bridging the gap between buyers' expectations and suppliers' capabilities, and suppliers' over-reliance on limited key accounts. Searching for suppliers is a key step in the procurement process. The suppliers need to meet the company's expectations regarding cost, capacity, quality, deadline, as well as performance. Introducing Market Access Platform, your preferred portal to source localized and transformed suppliers. Market Access Platform, MAP, is an online portal that influences localization and transformation. It enables corporates to refer, find, and rate vetted high-performing transformed suppliers, local service providers, and manufacturers across industries, thereby creating market access for suppliers while mitigating the risks associated with sourcing from unfamiliar companies. Buyers are able to find reliable and vetted localized and transformed suppliers, refer their high-performing transformed suppliers, local manufacturers, and service providers to MAP, thereby enabling them to grow and become more competitive. Advertise procurement opportunities. Support the growth of their own high-performing suppliers. Increase competitiveness in sourcing. Reduce the cost of sourcing. Rate services received from suppliers. review the socio-economic impact of their commercial activity with selected suppliers, and record and monitor their localization procurement commitments. Suppliers are able to increase their visibility in a cross-industry marketplace, find other suppliers to procure from, and view tenders when published. Benefits and unique selling proposition. Buyer benefits. Contribute towards a localized and transformed supply chain. Retain and create jobs. Enable the sustainability of suppliers by creating market access opportunities. And contribute to the growth of the economy by favoring local manufacturers and service providers by increasing local demand. Supplier benefits. Corporate visibility. Gauge client satisfaction. B2B opportunities, buying from other suppliers. And attend proudly South African events and be exposed to the collective National Buy Local campaign, calling on both private and public sectors, as well as consumers, to procure locally. We are therefore calling on corporate South Africa to review and secure procurement practices and give preference in all cases possible to companies that are manufacturing locally. Utilize MAP to influence localization and transformation. Refer and find high-performing suppliers. Advertise procurement opportunities. And record and monitor localization procurement commitments. Market Access Platform, your preferred portal to source localized and transformed suppliers.
And that's the platform. So you can use it as a buyer to find suppliers, to advertise tenders, and you know that the only ones who will see the tender are local producers. And so to summarize, we ask members of the private sector to secure, to give us localization commitments, to identify items or products that they can ring fence for purposes of buying them locally. We identify suitable companies on our database. They list on MAP. The buyers and the corporate representatives also register on MAP. As a result of this, buyers and suppliers of locally produced goods and services transact with each other. And what we do is then we track, the levels of local procurement that come about as a result of that. We also have targeted access to market programs, including, we work with entities that represent a lot of buying. The example given there is FASA. FASA is the Franchise Association of South Africa. Together with their members, we host workshops. Companies from our side pitch to them, and they pitch to decision makers coming from franchisors and franchisees. And as a result, they're able to start supplying some of those companies. This is just one example. We do this across many industries, including in the tourism space. In the past, we created portals when there was a need to, host companies that supply cloth, face masks, hand sanitizers, detergents, face shields, medical PPEs that were required in response to the COVID-19 pandemic on some sort of platform. We volunteered as part of Ken, and we put all of those local producers on our website, and you're able to, as a purchasing decision maker, find suppliers of these products on your platforms. In terms of what we do in the public sector is previously designated 27+1, which is cement. And basically, the government had said that all spheres of the state, when buying any of these items that you see on the screen, they had undertaken from as far back as 2012 to buy them locally. And so what we are doing now is we continue to lobby state entities to include local content requirements in their tenders, so that the back of those designated items, we can look out for the tenders that they issue out. We can, through a tender monitoring system, track those tenders and send them to companies that sit in our books who are able to respond to those tenders, such that government ultimately buys local. Question that comes up a lot is, what it takes to be a member. So, I've taken you through the criteria, but there is a fee attached to it. Perception has always been that it's expensive to be a member of PolySAFCA, and it's in no way expensive. It costs less than 500 rands. It's 500 rands plus VAT if your turnover is less than 5 million rands per annum. If your turnover is between 5 million and 10 million rands, you pay 1,000 rands per annum. And the most that any company that affiliates with us ever has to pay for membership purposes with us is 100,000 rands. And that is for companies with turnovers of 100 million rands and more. So it's not expensive at all. So as I conclude, Program Director, I want to quickly introduce a campaign that we have started rolling out as Proudly South African. This is our latest campaign, our latest TV ad, which underpins the consumer education campaign that we have put out, where we're basically saying to South Africans, it's important to be mindful of the fact that we have an economy to pass over to the next generation. And through our purchasing decisions, we can ensure that that economy is one that will be able to sustain future generations. And it starts with the purchasing decisions that we make now. And so let me quickly take you through the campaign, and then I will then have concluded.
There's a voice that is calling, loudly calling, day by day, the voice of the future.
When I started my business, all I wanted was to create jobs and a legacy for the next generation, because I see opportunity when others see impossibility.
It all started with a thought and then a seed in the garden, which grew into my very own farm that feeds the whole nation daily.
Cotton, silk, and a little bit of treasure, I create masterpieces that give South Africans an identity, comfort, and confidence, because when you look good, you feel good.
From the factory workers to the warehouse and then over the seas, I want to show the world what proudly South African looks like. It all started with just some ink on paper and inspiration to bring people together. With my furniture, I now help create spaces that are beautiful, comfortable, and authentic to human light and connection.
I've always been driven by curiosity. It fueled my dreams to create automobiles that accelerate our nation into greater possibilities and the beauty of the unknown.
I was born into a rainbow nation. My life has been full of colors and mixed flavors. And when I started my bakery, I wanted to share the joy with the world and with South Africans in particular.
All I ever dreamt of was to be a bird and fly high. And now I have the wings to help others fulfill their dreams of flying high too.
But it can only be a dream until you make it a reality. All they need is your faith, your trust, your loyalty, your appreciation.
And most importantly,
Your support.
because supporting local businesses
Helps create jobs
and secures our future.
South Africa, their future is in your hands. So what are you going to do about it? Be proudly South African. Buy local to create jobs.
And that's the ad. So buy local to create jobs. The second half is in your hands. In our view, the first half was the period before and the pandemic hit all of us. And when we paused, just like in a soccer match or in any sporting match, when we paused during the hard lockdown, we saw that as halftime. So there's an opportunity now that the economy has opened up again for us to do things differently, which is the second half. So heed the call of the children, buy local, help us create jobs, help us sustain livelihoods. If you want to become a member of Proudly South African, for those of you on the call who are not, contact us info@proudlysa.co.za. A lot of you on the call are members. If you want to know how to access some of this, initiatives that we have put in place for your benefit as a local producer or as a local service provider, reach out to us, info@proudlysa.co.za, and we'll be able to assist you. Thank you very much, Program Director. My story ends here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO of Proudly South African, Mr. Eustace Mashimbia, for giving us an overview of the campaign. Just to welcome those who have joined us in the interim, you are in the webinar that is presented by Proudly South African in partnership with the Localization Support Fund, and the webinar is titled Access to Support and Industry-Focused Research Within the Local Manufacturing Sector. And as I mentioned before, about 2/3 of the Proudly SA membership base does consist of manufacturers. So if you're a member, welcome to the webinar today. Back in 2022, we ourselves commissioned a study. It was titled Revitalizing SA's Manufacturing Sector and the Multiplier Effect of Investments into Various Subsectors, Industries, and Manufacturing as a whole. We looked at the multiplier effect. We had to do that work because we had some localization naysayers out there who weren't very supportive. And we looked at what it would mean for industry as a whole, and specifically, which is the goal for us is the job creation element. So if you think Proudly South African, you know it's the Buy Local campaign. So we lobby all three spheres of society to buy local. But in terms of our forte is access to markets for our member companies. And in addition to that work, we always bring to you new partners that can uplift businesses that do the things that Proudly SA do not have the resources for. So it really gives me a great pleasure to now introduce you to the CEO of the Localization Support Fund, Tami Muhate, my sister. Thank you very much for being on the call today. And it's really an exciting time because there was a big gap in terms of assessing the how. So we did the study about localization is the way to go, but the how, we need partners in doing that research, etc. And it was one such element that there was a big gap in the country, and we're really thrilled to introduce Tami to you and to take us through your mandate. And then afterwards, if you have any questions or during Tami's presentation, don't hesitate, pop us a question in the Q&A box. Tami, over to you.
Thank you, Janine, and thank you, Eustace, and thank you to Proudly SA for inviting the Localization Support Fund to this session. I want to say good morning to everyone. I think Eustace has started us really well in terms of what we mean by localization and where our interest should be. So I want to start by saying that around 1995, I think as we opened up our economy, our manufacturing contribution to GDP was about 21% at that stage. And then we went into, so we opened up South Africa, so some protections were removed, and we were trading with the international world, and imports were coming to us, as we've seen now. And we went through the global crisis in 2008, 2009, and our manufacturing contribution flattened, affected by what was happening at the time. And then, as Eustace has said, then we went into COVID in 2020, and our manufacturing contribution has been flat since then. We haven't really come back. Numbers that came out from Stats SA in August, especially around jobs, showed that while construction increased their acquisition or their contribution in terms of jobs, the manufacturing sector lost jobs. I mean, the sector in itself is affected by various challenges. One, which is imports that are cheap coming into the country. Those make it really hard for our manufacturers to compete. We have other factors that affect our costs, such as the energy crisis. So our cost of production tends to be really high. And then we have lost some capability in some of the sectors that we manufacture in, and that has affected us. So the Localization Support Fund was born in 2021. And really who we are, we are a non-profit company that is funded by private sector contributors who are committed to the localization of manufacturing within South Africa. So our seed funder at the time was Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa, who committed 80 million rand per annum over a three-year period. And they had partnered with the DTIC to create us. So whilst our stakeholders include government, in this instance, DTIC, we are a private company, so we're not a department of the DTIC. So our mandate is to promote strategic localization in relation to manufacturing. So we play along any subsector of manufacturing, and I will explain as I go how we're doing that. And I'm going to share with you examples of the work that we do. So how do we promote the strategic localization? We commission industry research. We deploy technical experts into manufacturing entities to assist in unblocking and unlocking for localization. So for us, a win is to see our manufacturers increasing their capacity for local procurement and for exports. It's a rand contribution to manufacturing, which would then mean we're increasing our contribution to GDP. It would also mean we are increasing the number of jobs we create. As we know that manufacturing is one of the sectors that has previously and can create more jobs. And then secondly, we want to improve our capability. So we've lost capability in some sectors, and it is important that we bring back that capability locally. The CEO of Proudly SA spoke about halftime, what happened when we went to lockdown during COVID. Supply chains were disrupted. It was difficult to procure components that we usually import into the country, and we needed them to be made here at home. So it's quite important for us to increase our capability such that we can start producing again some of what we need here. Yes, we are a small economy and there are big economies that can produce more than us. But as we've seen through the examples provided to us, it's important for us as a country to have our own capability along the manufacturing sectors. We also partner with other participants in the localization ecosystem to deliver on our results. Us being here is an example of that partnering. So we work with the public sector, we work with the private sector, and we work with labor. And our board will just show you just the composition of that we are partnering across just to ensure that we are delivering on our mandate. But as I've said before, our purpose is to unlock and unblock for localization through industry research and deployment of these technical resources. So our focus areas really are around what I've touched on, which is developing and enhancing local manufacturing capacity and capability for local demand and exports. And focus 2 and 3 really feed into focus 1, because when we fund industry research that would enable local manufacturing, and I'll bring this to life through the examples that I will share shortly. When we deploy technical support and expertise, we want to accelerate our competitiveness. We want to replace imports. We want to access opportunities for export. We also want to promote innovation. We do understand that the way we used to manufacture back in the day has changed with modernization, with the advent of technology, automation in some instances. So we want our manufacturers to be able to also manufacture at a level that is competitive and produce quality that is equivalent to their peers globally. In that way, our buyers, where the demand is required, would then prefer to procure locally. So we always say we want to be an enabler, we want to be a network orchestrator where we collaborate with the relevant industry stakeholders. So both in the supply and demand side, we want our suppliers to be able to provide for the demand that's required, but we also want to help our suppliers to produce for the global market. So just in terms of bringing then to life what I've said and what it is that we do or how we execute, I'm going to share a few examples. So in the furniture industry, we partnered with the South African Furniture Initiative, and there it's an industry body. And I think it's important that I emphasize that within the ecosystem, we work a lot with industry associations. And the reason for that is that the members, most manufacturers belong to industry associations, and it's good for the LSF to solve for industries rather than specific companies, while we deploy for a company, a technical expert. Let's make an example in a furniture industry. The learnings that we get from that manufacturer will be shared across the industry so that we don't duplicate effort and we allow for the learning to happen across that sector or that industry. So the first example is that LSF partnered with the SAFI, which is the South African Furniture Initiative. And here we have two phases. The phase one was introduction of lean manufacturing principles. And the key milestone or output we wanted the members to understand how they can apply the principles of lean to reduce wastage in their plants. And that would then in turn assist with the cost of production. We've seen lean applied in the automotive sector. So we used a very well-known service provider that has worked in auto to help here. And this was an 8-week program where we had a good turnout of the members of SAFI that went through this program. Where we at now, we have a call out for those members who attended that session. And we are saying now that you've attended the session, now that you know how you should manufacture, demonstrate to us the need that you need now the expert to come to your plant to assist you to implement these principles over a period of time. So that's where we're at, and that process we do foresee that will take a couple of years to close. Having said that, we are open to manufacturers or furniture manufacturers that did not attend the course, but would demonstrate the need for LSF to deploy an expert in their plants to assist with improving their cost reduction measures or improve efficiencies. So we are open to that, and I will explain how everyone gets access to us. The second part, we talk about research. We have an energy challenge in the country, and it is affecting most of our manufacturers. I think today we are at level 5 or 6. So some people will not be able to go into production or would have to reduce their production because there is no energy. So we partnered with the SAREM facilitator, and here we're solving for two things. While we're solving to ensure that we plug in as an enabler into the ecosystem of energy, we're also trying to make sure that as the generation paths are happening, so solar, PV, wind, storage, all of that, we are importing a lot of this. So the money is going out of the country. So we're saying here, locally, what suppliers do we have in each of these three technologies that I've mentioned? And what capacity do they have? And can they ramp up as the demand increases? So this is work that we are close to closing, and we've had good feedback from the industry and the manufacturers. Then ours as LSF is to share the information and the results of the work. We've had one with the SAREM facilitator so that those results become part of SAREM. 2, those results get shared with the industry bodies that work within the ecosystem. So for example, you have Proudly SA who would have members that are there who would then be in the databases, and people know that these companies can manufacture and theirs would be to increase capacity. By way of example, you have members of the manufacturing circle, members that are in BUSA, by way of example. All these, Polasa, I can name all the industry bodies, but the point I'm trying to make is that now we will know that, to Janine's point, the naysayers that say we don't have capability, one will show that we have capability. And then together within the ecosystem, we will try to solve now for capacity. The second part of this is that there's a quadrant of opportunities. So where we have the capability to produce something, but we have not gone to the next level. So an example where we have, how can I put it, the lines, the transmission lines. If locally we have capability to produce a certain, to a certain size of a pole that's required for this transmission line, how do we, as the LSF and as industry, support these manufacturers to have the capability to produce to the next size of a transmission line that is required? And this requires a very proactive effort between the private sector financiers to give these manufacturing companies the finance they give, us like the LSF and other entities similar to us to deploy the experts required to allow for the industry to be able to have that capability. And it requires the demand side to play their part as in terms of buying from these manufacturers instead of us saying we don't have the quality here at home and going outside. Then another example I can share is in the clothing and textiles industry. Here we're solving for efficiencies. I mean, people who have been in the manufacturing space would say at some point, clothing, textiles, they call it CTFL, clothing, textiles, footwear and leather, that subsector within manufacturing was a huge employer. And we lost a lot of capacity that we used to have. And it has been through the implementation of the CTFL master plan that we've seen the members that signed there, I mean, starting to procure locally and increasing demand. And we have a manufacturer that has approached us and is part of that program. And they are looking at improving their efficiencies and reducing cost on a certain line of their production. And essentially what we're doing, we're going to deploy industry engineers to this plant. We're going to deploy a garment technician to this plant. And they're going to assist this manufacturer to improve or achieve a certain percentage sewing line efficiency, increase their sewing capacity, so that if they are locally producing for their total line, currently 30%, they would increase that towards 70, towards 100%, depending on, of course, the economy and how their projects pan up. They want to reduce what they call a standard minute value on a product range. They want to reduce the cost that they have in terms of labor on a product. So by deploying engineers and garment technicians, we are assisting this company to improve its efficiency, be more competitive, locally, produce more efficiently. That means then that their costing would be much more optimized and buyers would then have interest and they can now produce at competitive prices compared to their peers, sell locally, be able to export. This project is kicking off for the LSF, and it's a project that will take a while because it has to be implemented and we have to be able to observe that what we try to achieve will be achieved. And I think one of the things that you see with programs like this is that as the efficiencies are implemented, there's an opportunity then for entities like this to create more jobs than lose jobs. And then, so that was where we are deploying technical experts. And I think the last one I just want to touch on is, again, in energy. So we talk a lot, or we have talked a lot about the generation part and of energy, which has talked to the renewable energy programs, which has talked to coal. Before we talked about nuclear. So that's here we've talked about. Now we're saying, while we solve for this, we need to move this energy that we're producing across. So the transmission and distribution programs are about to kick in or have kicked off in some instances. And as LSF, we then commissioned a study. And this study was saying we want to map out the value chain of the transmission and distribution value chain. But we wanted specifically to map out 4 components. So to understand, so if you say this is the value chain of the transmission and distribution value chain, which components are required? Then we said, what capability do we have? So who is out there? Again, we've mapped out all the manufacturing companies that currently exist that have the capability to produce when these programs kick off, that can increase their capacity to produce as soon as these programs are rolled out. I mean, the theme around energy is around stable demand, that when we say we're going to roll out projects and we're going to need transformers of X amount, that demand must come through. This will allow the companies to expand. Again, the LSF opportunity here is around saying where there's capability or there's an opportunity to produce, how can we assist those manufacturers to be at a level where they're able to compete with their international peers, such that local companies will catch the investment spend that is coming through programs like this. So this study has been completed, and the LSF and the study is available on our website. And on the 27th, we're having a roundtable with the industry players to discuss this paper. And again, a paper like this will be of interest to the SAREM process, will be of interest to members of the bodies I mentioned before. So we look forward to having a fruitful discussion and being able to enable our manufacturers to participate. LSF is a plug-in, really. We're not a fund that can work on its own. We are a fund that is trying to be a catalyst to enable for manufacturers, such that when they get funds deployed for their programs, they're able to meet the demand that they think that they can. So they are suppliers that can meet demand required by buyers. But two, we want to improve, to be a partner that would assist to improve our local capability, such that we reduce the noise around the fact that we say we don't have capability. So what is it that we are and what is it that we're not? Okay, so we're saying we are a South African manufacturing localization capitalist, as I've said. We fund expertise and resources to unlock opportunities to accelerate implementation and delivery. And I think I have demonstrated that through examples I've given you. We want to close organizational gaps. We talk about lean. So where we want to reduce costs, we want to make sure that teams are performing at optimal levels. We say we want to strengthen teams through initial funding of specialist roles. So we have projects that we are about to fund where a project is moving to commercialization and they want to scale up. So, I mean, that transition is something we assist with as the LSF by deploying technical experts, just to ensure that when you get to production, you are able to produce at levels that you are required to. We augment existing localization projects and programs. I think the SAREM example is a perfect example. We partner with complementary institutions. I mean, we are here through Proudly SA, and so that's a good example as well. What we're not is an investor. So as LSF, I won't give you money into your manufacturing entity. I will provide a service provider to solve for a challenge. So we don't, and we don't want to be the primary or the sole funder of a localization project, unless the requirement relates to the LSF scope. But by sole funder, I mean, we do mean that we will own, if we're funding a project and there's elements of it that we feel the entity should take on, we usually just then stay away from those. So I'll give an example. In the clothing and textile projects, we are deploying only for the technical experts. The project management of that whole program is for the company. We don't provide working capital or debt, as I've said, we don't, and grant. So like I've said, we don't give any of those. We don't provide supply chain database or RFQ platforms. I mean, I think Proudly SA has done that very well, just in terms of providing a supply chain database. So when you apply, or who should apply? So we consider your application if you are a South African-based business. So for us, we are about localization. So if you're a South African-based business, private, public, we look into your application. You must be able to demonstrate demand for your product. You must provide evidence of your local manufacturing capability or capacity. to deliver, so that we understand where the constraints are. So you could be starting up, but you can see that your demand is increasing, you need help, as to the example I shared. You should be able to actually articulate the support that you require and the impact. The impact is usually around increasing your capacity or your capability. And we do want to see jobs coming into that as well. And ours is always about working an entity to delivering a competitive, locally produced product. So quality is important. And I think that's why there's an opportunity for a company like ours to assist. So how you apply, that's our website that we have put up there. In there, there's a form, it's called Request for Assistance. It's a form you fill in. I think on this call, I need to emphasize, while there's a form there, if you look at it and you find that you are struggling to fill it in, email us, talk to us. We are happy to engage and also walk you through the application form or the application process to assist. So we need the form as a control measure so that we are able to get as much as we need out of you. But when you struggle to fill it, we are also happy to assist in the process. Janine, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about the LSF, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Tami, thank you so much for that. I wonder, can we leave your contact details, the slide up for a little bit longer while we take the questions?
Yes,
and so far, is that perfect? Thank you. I see there are only 2 questions on and that have been posted. So I'd like to encourage everybody who may be online with us today, please do post your question. And I'm going to call out Candy's question. And Eustace, I think this was posted when you did your presentation. So if I can refer this one to you, Candy asks, how do we compete with prices from imports? The larger retail chain stores want products for the same price. This is a challenge as China sends in products with prices that we cannot compete with. Sio, do you want to tackle that question?
Yes, that's fine. So the biggest thing that we are doing as parties of Kenya is ensure that local producers compete on an equal footing. And so we have developed, for example, what I took you through as the market access platform. And the intention is for procurement opportunities to be made available to local producers so that you all compete on an equal footing because your input costs are the same. And as a result, you will not be disadvantaged as a result of competing with somebody who brings in their product from outside. So we are continuously engaging the private sector, engaging government with a view to getting them to issue procurement opportunities such that it's clear that the only people who are meant to respond to those opportunities, because they are ring-fenced for local producers, are local producers and local service providers, because that way we can then give you an absolute guarantee that you will be able to compete fairly with someone who complies with the same statutory regulations, same minimum wage regulations, same input costs sourced within the borders of South Africa. So that is what we endeavor to do. It's a difficult one, but through our programs, we are able to deal with some of those issues. Thank you, Janine.
Thank you, Eustace. If you can stay on the line, there's another question from Rashida. And Rashida is from the National Informal Traders Alliance of South Africa. I think this is also targeted at Proudly South African. I could be wrong, but how do we as informal traders, who are also manufacturers, who do not even have 1 million rand turnover, we need to grow to that level as well. We are an organized movement. So I see if I can, Eustace, if I can refer that one to you.
Yeah. Look, as part of South Africa, we work with formalized businesses. It's easier for us to take them through the vetting process. But what we can do, Rashida, is maybe we can have a chat right to us, info@proudlysa.co.za, because you're talking about an organized movement, which I assume is registered as an alliance itself. So let's talk about formalizing a relationship with you and then seeing how that formal relationship can then benefit some of your traders. But they individually as informal traders would not qualify. Unfortunately, it's one of those minimum requirements. We want formalized, established businesses because as we secure the opportunities, especially in the private and the public sector, we pass them on to from formal structures and formal entities that, you know, we can give an assurance to that the products delivered will be delivered on time, the quality will be right, the pricing will be as required. Because competitiveness is one of the things that we continuously have to battle with. And so it's easier for us to deal with all of those issues when we're dealing with formally registered businesses. But reach out to us, info@proudlysa.co.za. We will then see how to then have a formal relationship for your benefit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eustace. And then Taupo's question, he says, with all the 4IR technology on our market environment, as Proudly South Africans, can we really afford to not enforce the legislation that protect private business intellectual property from all the outlaws that are currently thieving on the internet? Eustace, I think this one is also for you.
Yeah, the people are guarding for me, and we told them they're here for Tammy, not for me. But look, most importantly is the fact that, I mean, when I had my slide earlier on around the different elements that are part of this ecosystem of you doing business in the country, the registering of IPs and trademarks was one of the things that I flagged to say, despite the fact that this thieving happens on the internet, like you said, you still need to register your IP. You still need to protect it such that if anyone goes and utilizes it against your wishes and without necessarily seeking approval for you, you can then be able to take them on. I mean, when you register, you are able to register your product according to the different classes. You can register in different countries. So depending on the markets that you are targeting, you are able to register in those markets such that if anyone goes and replicates your idea in those markets, you can then take them on. So we have members in our books that can assist you with that. We can refer you to them once you have registered your IP in anywhere in the world where you've registered and protected your IP or trademark goes and utilizes your intellectual property. You can then be able to take them on. So reach out to us, info@proudlysa.co.za. Let us introduce you to the different guys that are in our books that are meant to assist you with this.
Thank you very much for that. Just as it just reiterates the point made earlier, Proudly South Africa cannot do all this work by ourselves. We do count on our partners to assist and help in accordance with their mandates. So if there are no more questions, I'll just give 10 seconds or so. Then I think it's time that we close. So thank you so much to our speakers today, Mr. Eustace Mashimbe, the Proudly South African CEO, Tammy Muhatse, the CEO of the Localization Support Fund. Tammy's details are on the screen, so please take note and do reach out to us if you might misplace them or so, and we'll definitely put you in touch with her and her organization. So thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you to all who've joined, and thank you very much to the Proudly South African events team for really organizing a very interesting webinar, and we look forward to making a difference together. Thank you very much, everybody. All the best, and see you soon.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye.